We're going to get started with today's special meeting of the Phoenix City Council, scheduled for December 1st, 2015. We're at a different location than we normally have our city council meetings. Today we're having our meeting at the Phoenix Convention Center. The purpose of the meeting is to have the first of our workshops related to strategic goal setting. Would the clerk please call the roll? Or city attorney, whoever is here. Is someone here to call roll? City manager, please.
Councilman DeCiccio.
Here.
Councilman Gallego.
Here.
Councilman Gates.
Here.
Councilman Nowakowski. Here. Councilwoman Pastor.
Here.
Councilman Waring. Here. Councilwoman Williams. Here. Vice Mayor Valenzuela. Here. Mayor Stamp.
Here. Today's meeting will be facilitated by Patrick Ibarra, and he'll introduce himself in just a moment. Although not tied specifically to this agenda in general, we're going to start out by a discussion about the purpose of the series of goal-setting workshops, which will be interactive, then followed by a review on the concept and roles of government, then a discussion of headwinds, change as a process, not an event, and then tailwinds, cities evolving roles as a community builder, and then a discussion of next step, explore topics for future workshops. I'll now hand it over to Patrick Ibarra, our facilitator for today and future workshops, to introduce himself and how we're going to go about the process for today. Patrick, good to see you.
Thanks, Mayor Stanton. And good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Hopefully everyone had an enjoyable holiday last week. Yes? Yes. Everybody has their Christmas shopping finished? No. Well, hey, I'm delighted to be here today. Just a quick story, a little bit about a background about me. I actually worked for the city of Phoenix 30 years ago when I was finishing graduate school at ASU, and I know we have some ASU fans in the room. There's 3 public universities in Arizona, right? ASU, yep. NAU, and Glendale Community College.
That's right. Go for the community college.
Somebody asked me why I didn't go to U of A. I said I already have a high school education. Anyway, so my stock just went up and down at the same time in the room. But when I was finishing graduate school, I actually worked as an intern in the mayor's office, who was then Terry Goddard. And from there went to work in the Public Works Department as a management assistant. So it's kind of a touching moment for me to come back and be working with the city 30 years later after I started my career here. I'm a former city manager. I was 6'3" when I was a city manager, so I spent 15 years in that business. I'm also a recovering HR director before I started the Mejorando Group. Mejorando is Spanish. It means getting better all the time. We started in 2002, and we're based in Glendale. And I have clients, I travel about 100,000 miles a year. You know you've been traveling too much when you call down for room service and your spouse hangs up on you. That's a problem. But I have the good fortune of working with cities nationwide, cities small, large to large. I worked with the city of San Antonio this past summer, doing the same kind of facilitation service, and with a number of cities around the valley who are participating and trying to create that focus for the forthcoming years. We know in government there's all sorts of ambiguity. And historically, is government proactive or reactive? What do we find government tends to be? Tends to be reactive. I would offer to you that sometimes it reflexes, which precedes a reaction. We think about it, we talk about thinking about it. Some people wait for a divine intervention. That's called a conclusion. This is about trying to get out in front of those, as we'll examine later, the headwinds. How do you leverage those as opportunities proactively to build the community that you're trying to build? And that's an ongoing process. And what we've designed for today is to really set the table. You know, this is the first of a series of 3 workshops. So think of this process, too, as a starting line, not a finish line. People want to just get through it and get finished. Really, it's important about having a meaningful discussion around things that you don't always get a chance to have a discussion around. As you know, at a council meeting, you're going to vote. There's no voting during these sessions. That's the plan. It's really try to build a consensus, create some unanimity. Based on the discussions that I've had with Ed and his staff, this process really came out as a result of your discussions with Ed during his annual review, that you wanted to pursue some strategic goal setting. So the city went through a competitive RFP process. My firm responded. We were selected in that process. And then we started to customize the process to make sure it fit with the particular needs. So a couple opening thoughts before we get into that. I know as an elected official, that there's sometimes a caution that you apply when you do strategic planning. You're trying to anticipate and put things in place, capital, infrastructure, policy, procedures, assets, all those different elements. And then there's the ongoing business of running local government, and you hear from constituents and business owners and neighbors, and I'm sure you've all sort of have given up going to the grocery store. At least your spouse not waiting in the car anymore for you because you're never in there for a few minutes, right? You get pulled and pushed in a lot of different directions. There's a tug of war. I want to make sure that we're clear about the outcome of this process is not to reduce the opportunity to be responsive to constituent needs. You're still going to have those issues. This is not a competition for that sort of effort. This is a way to get clarity going forward in 2016 and maybe even into 2017. What are the key priorities that you would like the city manager and his staff to focus their time and attention on? And as you all know, one of the most important ingredients for a successful council-manager partnership is a shared understanding of priorities. And there's always that shifting dimension that happens about the push and pull of politics. This is trying to at least clarify for the forthcoming year, where is it that you want that time and attention focused on? So that's really the outcome. We'll get to that. We're not going to get to that necessarily today. Today is really trying to examine some of those issues before you get to some of those recommendations. We want to make this highly interactive as well. So it's a very low-tech process. I have my flip chart and my markers up here. I'm going to be taking a lot of notes. We've also got Nick, who's going to take the minutes for us. We'll sort of blend our notes to capture that, share it back with all of you. At the end of today, we're also going to be sharing, Nick is right over here, another ASU grad. All right. Yes, and a former student of mine. I also teach at ASU. So we're going to take those notes, and we're going to see what the opportunities are to go forward. So we don't necessarily have a predetermined path of where we go exactly from here. We have some ideas, as Ed and his staff and I have talked about it. We just don't know exactly. We want to customize it based on what results you achieve today. At the end of today, we also want to sort of revisit the notion about what are your expectations going forward for the subsequent workshops. I want to make sure that we field those so we incorporate that into the process. Okay? Thoughts or questions or comments before we get started into the... No? Okay. Well, the first question on the agenda, and hopefully everybody has the agenda, and then you have a set of handouts like this. And the handouts are simply, everybody have these? Anybody not have these? So I encourage you to follow along, and really the handouts are simply a place for you to record your thoughts and ideas and comments. I know, and I had the opportunity to attend one of the council meetings where you discussed this. I wasn't able to attend the other one. But I did watch it on your cable channel online, and as well as the subcommittee meeting where you discussed this. So I have a little bit of background in your council discussions regarding pursuing the strategic planning goal-setting process. As we were preparing for today, we thought it would be helpful and included in your packet last week just a couple of questions. I know it's tough to do over the long holiday weekend. Maybe it was a good way to escape the family issues that I've got some work to do. So you got a chance to pull out your packet and go do some work. And included about the item for this was 2 questions just to kind of lubricate your mind, process that. And that's what really we're trying to do today is sort of lubricate your mind around those things you don't always get a chance to talk about in a way that you don't always get a chance to talk about them. And we're not going to be doing any, there's no trust circles. We don't call it team building, no namaste or anything like that. This is a very practical, productive discussion. And that's what we want to keep it focused on. When you think about it, though, the first question I had on here is, what about this process will satisfy you that you and your colleagues' time will be well invested? So I'm curious to know from your vantage point, as you've thought about this gathering, and I call this an advance instead of a retreat, because it's more important about where you're going than where you've been. When you think about that question, what you hope to gain from this, I'm curious to know, find out from you what you hope to gain from this. Let me just put up, I always put spell check up in case I misspell any words, but what do you hope to gain from this strategic plan goal setting process? You all have thoughts and ideas and expectations. We're trying to understand those better so we match up. Yes, Councilman.
A living document, which is something that's not just put on the shelf, but that we continue to use.
Okay, a living document?
Some kind of a document that we can actually, department heads can actually use to create an operational planning for each of those departments that we as council members can actually weigh and measure. So.
Okay. All right. Councilman?
I've got a couple. One, I mean, if you look at some of the things that we've done in the past, I mean, sometimes it's all encompassing because we want to cover everything. I think from my end, I'd like to see us be able to focus on those 2 or 3, maybe 4 things, you know, that we come into agreement with as a council, and then put those in place, but also following what Councilman Nowakowski has just said, not only a living document, but one that translates to the department heads but also has specific steps of what's going to be done next, rather than just, something out front that says, here's where we want to be aspirationally.
Okay.
I mean, I thought some of the questions you put together were really good, especially when you start looking at the long-term, where do we expect government to be? What is our role today? What do we expect it to be? Because that's a huge change, and that deals with the item that you talked about earlier about us being more reactive than proactive.
Yeah.
So by focusing on those 2 or 3 things, 4 things, whatever they are that
Right.
we come into agreement with, I think it's going to be a lot easier for us to move forward. Is what we see as the big issues.
Yeah, good comments. Part of the challenge, the opportunity and the challenge with this process is prioritization.
Right.
Right? That's both an opportunity and a challenge. The outcome, though, is to, and that historically in government there tends to be more is more. I would offer to you that a successful process like this, less is more. So if you adopt 3 or 4 key areas that you really can that staff can immerse their teeth in and really add value to whatever it is they're doing to build the community, all those practices and programs and policies, then I think it tends to have more of an impact. And I think you all get to see the evidence of that. And that's just, it's more demonstrable that way, as opposed to, the length of, I was in government years ago when, we would do these kind of sessions and there was a tendency to have, we'd come out of a 2 or 3 day session, there was 50 things on it. And that was not sustainable and tough to implement with any level of success. I think local governments have learned a lot from the process that less is more. So trying to adopt a few key things and really zero in your attention on activating those. So thank you, Councilman.
If I could, I don't know if we're allowed to just, I don't know what the rules are. We haven't done this one before. But if you look at it, though, too, if we could maybe even talk amongst ourselves what we see as the top issues, maybe write some of that stuff down, and then focus on how we want to get some of those things done. And some of the things you may want to look at focus-wise would be, and you've got it really well done here. I mean, it's general, but I thought you did a really good job at wanting to get us focused that way. Would be to look at what we see as the potential problems, the headwinds that you call them, then what you see as the tailwinds.
Right.
And that could be just 1 or 2 issues total in those things. Is this not working? Now it is. Thank you, Councilwoman Pastor. She's always taking care of me. She's so good. But maybe going that way, finding out, I mean, I know what I think in my head are some important things that we need to move forward on, and not necessarily, what everyone else may think. Right. But I'd like to find out from others on the council, too, what they see the top 2 or 3 things.
Yeah, and absolutely. That's what you're going to be reaching more than likely at the next workshop than today. Let me just draw a diagram about how we sort of see this process working. Think of an inverted pyramid where we talk with the broad issues at the top. This is the exploration of the issues, right, this process. And as we go through each step, some today and some of the subsequent workshops, by the time you get down to here, the actions, the policies, whatever those projects or policies are, they're more refined. In order to get there, it's good to have the context. I know for working with elected officials, sometimes people get to this really fast and they get frustrated with the process. Some people stall up here and they can't get to this. I would offer to you highly effective governing bodies like yourself. It's good to have a combination of how people think, right? That there's people up here in the loftier notion, very strategic, very policy, while there's people at the operational. We're going to get to this. We just don't get there right now. Because then it has no context, it has no background, and then you're sometimes just have a solution looking for a problem. So, thank you, Councilman. Other thoughts about what you hope to gain from this process as you were preparing for it, as you thought about it, as you voted on it? Councilman?
I think it can also be a good opportunity for all of us to better understand those issues that are important to our colleagues, what their top priorities are, and see, if there are opportunities for partnerships as well.
Okay, thank you, Councilman. Other thoughts? What you hope to gain from this? Yes, Councilmember.
I think there's a number of dynamics that happens within each of our districts that are very similar across the board. And to really come to hear one another, some of the issues that we're facing within our district, but also to really become proactive and have staff be proactive in their language and getting to a solution. Oftentimes it's more of, it's a reactive way of looking at things, and I would like to a vision amongst us to be very proactive in coming to solutions, and maybe also guiding staff to get there, or having Ed understand where we're at and how on how it's okay for them to come with solutions, even if it's outside the box of the normal day practice, and really look at it in a holistic way.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that that's some of the dynamics that we have.
Okay, good. Yeah, this is really trying to enlarge the perspective for all of you around the topics themselves, as well as for a collective discussion that you're having to push those limits, right? And I would offer to you about outside the box, I would offer to you really where local government is now is there is no box, which is both liberating and daunting, right? Some of the past solutions don't work for future challenges. That's the challenge I think local governments have, is trying to apply old solutions to new problems. It's like pouring old wine in a new bottle. Some of that doesn't always work. It's not always appropriate. You know, things have changed. The terrain has shifted. So, other thoughts? Yes, Councilman.
I hope we will build upon our past planning efforts and really keep in mind all of the work we've done in the past and the thousands of citizens we've engaged, and build on things like the core values in our general plan.
Absolutely. And the way it's been described to me, and I think the way that we're approaching this is not a convening the group for this goal setting is not to imply there's a problem or there's a deficit. This is really to build on your strengths and synthesize down from Plan Phoenix some elements, as well as some elements that may not be captured in there for the goals for the city going forward, organizationally and operationally in 2016 and slightly beyond. So it's to build on those things, pull out of that Plan Phoenix as well as some of those dimensions, and make those more tangible, maybe make those more actionable in the sooner the better, the sooner time frame. So, absolutely. Other comments, thoughts, what you hope to gain from this process? Yes.
I want to go to Plan Phoenix because I think that is a great guide, and we had great participation by the community,
right.
And really with the city staff and all of us build what we want to see, or build a plan of what we would like to see what the future is. With Plan Phoenix, though, also in adopting it, now we're going to start to go through our growth spurts and the pains of going through some of Plan Phoenix that was adopted. And how do we then move forward as neighborhoods are now balancing and realizing some of the dynamics that will be happening within their neighborhood.
Right.
And how do we collectively together communicate in a very positive, proactive manner for growth,
right.
Really.
Yeah, how you leverage those, how you optimize those resources, absolutely. The easier part of a process like this is the discussion, the exploration, the examination, if you will. We're sort of examining the anatomy of the organization and the community, if you will. The simpler part of the process is doing that, convening the group, and adopting the 3 or 4 or 5 policy or projects. The harder part, as with anything in life, is implementation. It's the activation of it, because everybody's for it until all of a sudden it's not cohesive with how they see things happening in their own district and their own community. And I think government struggles with that. Small and large cities struggle with that, the implementation of actions that may be inconsistent with what you've done in the past. People sort of see the future as an extrapolation of the present. When you get into activating some of these decisions, it's not just business as usual. It does require a different approach in how you're tackling that. Resources as well as the practice itself. Therein lies the rub. Right, so this is a way to at least identify those and maybe even anticipate what those might be and craft some strategies around minimizing those negative impacts, whatever those might be. Speaking of Plan Phoenix, the second question on there is, how do you see this process contrasting with the process that was undertaken for that effort? Yes, Councilmember?
I think it's interesting that we're talking about Plan Phoenix, and the planning department is working with each of the villages to come up with the guidelines per village under that plan. So how that interfaces with what we're doing.
And I would offer that back to to all of you, how do you see this process different? Because I believe it is distinctively different. There is some overlap, right? But it's distinctively different about what you're going to achieve as the outcome of what you adopt.
Actually, there's not that much difference, I think.
Okay, well, let's see. Thoughts? How does the project Plan Phoenix contrast with this process for the budget, for the goal setting for the council?
I think it contrasts in a way that we collectively are having a dialogue where we're able to hear each other's thoughts, understandings, what we're facing within our district, and how do we go about moving collectively the city forward into where we have a vision to go to with the Plan Phoenix and also with some of the village pieces. But we don't have these dialogues or conversations and true understanding as to what we're really facing within our district, because I think there's commonality. It's just we're very silo in our conversations due to the fact that open meeting laws, and so we're not really sure some of the things that are happening. For example, just for me, in watching some of the growth that's happening within everyone's district that we've just faced recently, it's like, okay, how are they handling that? How are they handling all their neighborhood meetings? How are they handling opposition? When do departments come in traffic mitigation? How do you work with this other department to help with these issues that are happening within all our areas? We don't have that dialogue and conversation, and I think collectively we can see that and get there, because I think we pretty much think alike in how some of the solutions. I'm a very solution-oriented person, and so I want to come to solutions as to all of us. How do we handle it? The homelessness, we're facing a huge issue in homelessness within all our districts. I'm seeing it in many different emails. The human trafficking piece, that's going, there's a number of dynamics that are very similar, and how do we collectively come to that solution to solve that problem versus working in a very silo fashion. So that's where I think it's very different.
Okay, Councilman?
Yeah. And I think Councilwoman Pastor continues to talk about an issue that we ought to be discussing in this process, which is redevelopment. I mean, as a city, we've never gone through redevelopment the way that we are now. I mean, our history has been just going farther and farther out into the desert. And so all of us in different ways in our districts, we're dealing with these challenges of infill development, which are new challenges, which are very difficult, but provide great opportunities. And I think that a lot of the work in Plan Phoenix was kind of building the building blocks for that. But now we're seeing with real cases, real zoning cases coming forward, we're dealing with this, and maybe through this strategic planning process, we can talk about the lessons that we're learning and things that we can do better, frankly, as a city. And this touches all of our departments because again, it's almost like it's almost like we're turning the page in the city and dealing with going into a whole new era in a lot of ways.
Yeah, the maturation of every community goes through a maturation process, just like an organization. And we think about the history of Phoenix and beyond just the growth, but just the aging of itself, both demographically and community-wise. There is that maturation process. Sometimes things camouflage that. Increased budgets camouflage problems, right? So as the community does go through this maturation, in some respects, it is a first time that you've had to experience as a policymaker to deal with some of those issues in your district that candidly you may not have, as you said, you may not have dealt with before. And the way you deal with them is not necessarily the same way you've dealt with them when they were first created, because for a variety of reasons. So, Councilman?
I think they both hit, Councilman Gates and Councilwoman Pastor, are really, when we talk about what the differences are going to be, and what, again, going back to what we hope to get out of this thing and what the differences on the plan, is one, if you look at the plan, it's pretty general in a lot of ways. My hope is that we focus on those 2 or 3 things that are very focused and then work our way all the way down with specifics of how do we accomplish that. The second part of it is, and maybe a way to keep this thing moving along too, is to look at buckets. You know, the first bucket would be internal. What do we see within our internal organization of needing to be fixed? What are our positive attributes? How do we build on that? That kind of thing. The second thing would deal with both the council members we're talking about is the external part of it, of our districts and what do we see in our city, is the bucket is the external part.
Right.
You know, how do we deal with that? And when you're talking about redevelopment, we had Councilwoman Gallegos and I had a really good presentation. We were lucky to be sitting in a meeting where they had a professor from Arizona State University literally walk us through the next housing trends that are moving in this market here and how they're changing. And if you look at our plans even today, a lot of them are still set on the old model that, you know, let's face it, other than Bill or, well, I shouldn't say anything. Everybody here's younger than me. So just to keep it nice. Yeah, okay, we can say that for sure. True. But, yeah, but the new world right now is being dominated by the 25 and 30-year-olds. And if you're 30, you're almost, past that age of the millennials, right? Yeah. So and if you look at what they're looking for in just a simple thing as housing, it's a whole different world than what we think. And our mindset is still set on how we think and not really what's happening out there. But that's only on the housing end of it. But if you look at just even in government, the expectations of government sometimes are not sometimes, but they are changing. They've evolved. Our view of the world is what we bring with us. But that other view that's out there is one of how it really ought to be looked at, because that's the future and that's the direction we go in.
Yeah, I think that's
so two buckets, basically.
And I think that's a good way to distinguish that. And we will get to those as we start to separate out what your handful of policy areas are. As I mentioned, I have the good fortune of working with cities coast to coast. And some of the issues, regardless whether they're in the Plain States or I was just in Hilton Head Island a few weeks ago. No, I didn't get a chance to play any golf, but I saw the courses. And I've done work in California and Washington, Bainbridge Island up there. I'm going to be up there in January. I've done quite a bit of work in there. I have a lot of clients in the Dallas area where I'm the one with the accent. So I have clients all over, and some of these issues are impacting local governments, small to large, urban and rural, some of these same issues. Economic development is the most prominent topic talked about by councils because they understand that that's a key component. Housing has emerged in a way that I've not seen in the years. Both affordable housing and just housing itself has emerged as a prominent topic. And as well as other dimensions, but when you look at it, the issues that you're confronting with today are not the same ones you confronted with 5 years ago, and how you address those is not necessarily the same way. The challenge local government has, organizationally, internally, is it tends to be kind of fix itself as a straitjacket. It's very resource focused in order to address those issues. You look at those from a different terrain because you hear from business owners and market forces and those kind of things. How you're trying to address things is differently through that lens. And so it's how do you blend those perspectives? And Ed, obviously, his role is as the translator, understanding from where you're coming from and then trying to work on behalf of the staff. How do you blend that into what's the common approach the city's going to do about rezoning? Where's council with that? How does the staff activate that? And they're out there, obviously, living in that world too, feeling that pinch, but it's a different sort of temperature they take. But I just wanted to share that with you. The issues that are confronted here in Phoenix, I was in Chandler earlier this year, the issues they're dealing with. I'm in Apache Junction Friday. I was in Maricopa 2 weeks ago. I've done work in Avondale. I've done work in, all these cities around the valley. They're all just a matter of degree, but they're feeling some of the same growth pressures as well as challenges. Community-wise, civic engagement has obviously emerged as a real challenge. Growth development, millennials, housing. So there's no shortage of challenges, obviously. It's how do you want to go about fashioning the approach for the city to be more responsive and more aggressive maybe in dealing with those. And that's really what the part of this process is, trying to sharpen your focus with a more laser-like approach to get there. Other thoughts about that you have about how this contrasts with Plan Phoenix? We're just trying to make sure and make that distinction the best we can. I think we understand it conceptually, the discussions I've had with Ed and his staff, and how we're approaching this. Any other thoughts about that? Okay. And there's really no ground rules we laid for this. This is we're trying to make this as a highly interactive discussion as possible to really, we're sort of making spaghetti today. We're throwing a lot of things up on the wall. That's kind of the extent of my cooking capabilities. Throw a lot of things up on the wall, and we're going to see what sticks. So this is essentially we're trying to create a real healthy dialogue and brainstorming, if you will. There's really no right answer. As I say, every community has the same ingredients. What differentiates you is your recipe. And what this is part of your, Plan Phoenix is part of the recipe. The goal setting that you create out of this is part of your recipe for success. So hopefully that helps. The next question we have on the agenda, and feel free to jump in here if you had something that popped now about a previous question. Yes, council member.
What popped is it contrasts with the used for Plan Phoenix. What in reflecting is really kind of internal. And what I mean internal is internal inside the city and the staff and the departments. Because not everybody participated with Plan Phoenix and really have an understanding of what's that look like, how do we move it within our departments, and how do we collectively collaborate collectively on making sure, is this the plan, and how do we do it?
Right.
Along with the external, meaning the neighborhoods and businesses, nonprofits,
all those community partners.
faith-based, all the communities. How do we all work together to make it happen?
Yeah.
And resources, basically.
Yes, and that really leads us into that next discussion of the concept of governance. And this is not some academic discussion. When you think about the role of local government and the origins of local government, without giving you a history lesson or anything, really local government was created to help people accomplish things as a social good they otherwise couldn't do themselves, whether it was roads or water or public safety. In some respects, it still defines local government. What's happened over the last several, scores of years is that local government's role has, in some respects, expanded. In other roles, it's contracted. When you think about the role of this city council and the role of local government in general, it's really to be the protagonist for a better quality of life. You're trying to, through programs, policies, investments, services, trying to help generate and garner and improve quality of life. The concept of governance is to identify what's the role the different entities play in that execution, right? What's your lane? How wide is your lane? And what I want to do is offer up, to discuss, what's the role of the mayor? What's the role of the council? What's the role of the city manager? What's the role of the staff? And I would dare say, what's the role of the community? What are your expectations around those roles? Back to what Councilmember Pastor said earlier, trying to understand and blend perspectives is really helpful for a governing body. Not to say you're all going to agree on everything, and that's not even the intent here. We couldn't even agree where we're going out for happy hour. Do you know what I mean by that? Something simple. This has a lot more gravity. But trying to understand each other's perspective, I think, helps increase your effectiveness individually and collectively to understand the role. The challenge typically with the governance is where the role of the city manager and where the role of the council, where do those, and the mayor, where do those blur, where do those merge, and where do they separate? Where do those merge and where do those separate? So when you think about the role of the mayor, the role of the council, what comes to mind? I'm just going to start with the mayor. And this is really just trying to identify. No? Don't start with you? All right. Start with the role of the council. What's the role of the council?
Were you asking me? I apologize.
Oh, no. I was just asking the group. What's the role?
I apologize. I thought you were.
Oh, no. Yeah, I'm sorry. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah. I apologize for that, Mayor. When you think about what you see as the expectations of the mayor, what is that role? We're not trying to document this. We're not trying to laminate the outcome of this. We're really trying to surface expectations you have of each other. Back to what Councilmember Pastor said earlier. And this really helps set the table as well as you go forward with strategic planning so you can understand how wide your lane is. Where does your lane merge with the others and where does your lane separate? So, expectations, roles. We can jump to the council if that helps. Why don't we start with the council? What's the role of the council? What's your expectation of each other? Okay.
We sort of like the chairman of the board.
Okay.
He runs the meeting to make sure that we're all in line with the Robert Rules of Order.
Okay.
So that's the agenda.
Okay, so that's the agenda.
Appoints people to commissions and committees.
Okay.
say he's the public face of city government. People don't generally know who we are individually. They might understand there's a council, but they do know there's a mayor, and they kind of get kind of his role.
Right.
More than they do us collectively.
You're right. I think most people have an understanding, a working knowledge of what the role of a mayor is. Okay, good.
Excepting Sal's high name recognition. But other than that.
other than him.
Sorry, I didn't want to step on any toes. The rest of us.
And he's the only one that's elected citywide, right?
Okay.
Yeah, at large, yeah.
He's out there. Social media, tweeting, Facebooking.
What else?
I think the mayor has a lot of influence on the city, along with the state, and carries influence
Okay.
in making sure there's economic development, interaction with other countries.
Okay.
It's not a double door, by the way, it's just a single door, so we might want to stop before this guy is not able to get his head.
Well, the other two from my end is to set an agenda for the council, working with the council to set those 2 or 3 things that you want to see move forward in the year ahead.
Okay.
Helping the council identify what those problems are, what those opportunities are, the direction that the city ought to be in, and then also take a look and, look at what happened with My Plan Phoenix, look at what's coming out of here, and then working with the city manager to set forward an agenda that says, here are the things that we have to get accomplished in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years,
Right.
10 years, whatever that is.
Okay.
So more of a directional head of where the city ought to be going, a directional head of the council, and setting it forth and working with the city manager to set forward, and the council, an agenda that some of the things we'll agree on, some of the things we won't, but at least set that agenda moving it forward.
Kind of steering the ship,
Mhm.
right? As well as identifying the destination. Right?
Nothing I said inadvertently construed as positive, right? Because cameras.
It's all good.
I would say, though, he's got ultimately the bully pulpit.
Okay.
He's got more staff, he's got more name recognition, he's going citywide for the rest of it, generally speaking, hard. Whether we agree with the agenda or not, if something bad happens, like it or not, he's probably the one who
Right.
can be there, and vice versa. If it's something in our area, then we might be too, but it's just, he's gonna be the public face of it, for better or worse.
Right.
This is rules here, then things can apply, positively.
Right. Kind of the emblem, the symbol, the advocate, spokesperson.
We all are collectively,
Right.
discussion with staff, if staff screws up airport, some of these other things, we own it in a way that they don't. So we're sort of, we're the people that people can throw the rocks at, or pat on the back if they so desire.
Okay. I want to transition in what you see as your role. Expectations, really what we're talking about is expectations. Beyond just the charter, it really depends on who's sitting in the seats, all of your seats as well, right? And you've all seen that. You're elected officials, you know that, what you inherit, as well as what the pressure's on you. So let's talk about so again, we're not, part of this is just some of the outcome of this whole session, as well as the 3 goal-setting sessions, is really to maybe reaffirm the path. There's benefit in having clarity about those expectations, to reset those. So it's not about just identifying those things that are different. Reaffirmation is really helpful in local government because of all the pressures on you to move you in different directions. Help you stay the course or widen that lane or what have you. There's a comment over there? Okay. So what's the role of the council? What are the expectations you have of each other? Okay. I'm sorry, set policy and, okay.
I would say for citizens, we're a little like ombudsman.
Okay.
Bring complaints to us, and we try to flesh it out. Different than the legislature or other places where we could hire and fire more and so forth. We have to go through someone else to get things fixed. But
Yeah.
oftentimes I feel like when I'm on a call with constituent staffer, and a staffer is sitting with me, I feel like I'm sort of a judge trying to weigh and guide the process a little bit. Even though I don't get to just rule by fiat. Kind of way it is.
Okay. Yeah, you're a broker in that sense.
A broker.
Yeah.
Better word.
Councilman?
Since we're elected by districts, we're the voices of our individual districts, in addition to hopefully representing the interests of the city as a whole. But that we are the one representative of our individual districts.
All right, Councilman?
Well, and this is one of the conversations I've had with staff before, too. I mean, it's no different than, you know, the role of the council member or any elected official. Their only job is to protect the public. That, you know, I've mentioned this to staff, sometimes it's creating some consternation, but my role isn't to protect them or the bureaucracy or the entity itself, but to protect the individual, because that's who I'm hired by.
Okay.
So if you look at it maybe like a role of an attorney, for those of you that are attorneys here, if you went to go talk to an attorney and that attorney said, hey, well, I've got to also represent these people here and those people there and those, not the individuals that you are hired to elect, you're elected to basically represent, then would you hire that person? More than likely not. So I think it's kind of blended over time, the role of an elected official, but it's bigger than just, you know, anything else. I think you're there to, you know, basically you represent that block, that in those groups of individuals in your district and in your city, whether the individuals on the other end like it or not, but that's your only role. So I mean, so essentially that's what it is. So you end up hiring somebody to go in there and represent your view and to push forward an agenda that represents you. You know, and I know that's created some issues sometimes even with staff. You know, from my end, I mean, everyone looks at it like, well, why are you so hard on it? But it's because that is the role. It doesn't matter whether you're a nice person, not a nice person. Your only job is to protect the public. That's it. Yeah. And that is who you represent.
Yeah. I think the challenge sometimes where that collides with understanding that one of the principles of local government is equity, right? Somebody calls up, a visitor calls up, somebody calls up 911. The dispatcher doesn't say, let me pull up your water bill to see if you're current, right? They don't really care where they're from or who they are. It's about equity and access. That's a principle of local government and has been for years. And that's the beauty of local government. It doesn't distinguish based on ability to pay. It's really a needs-based response. The downside of that is it creates that notion that one size fits all, and we've always done it that way. So equity sometimes collides with being responsive. And that's where I think staff sometimes is trying to both be a supporter of the process itself, at the same time trying to be responsive to a process that may not fit within that policy and procedure, right? Therein lies that challenge. How do you create a solution to an issue that may not fit nice and neat in the current policy or procedure? So just a perspective, I'm sure.
Well, one of the ways to do that is the customer's always right. So that means when someone calls your office, they are right off the bat. Right. Even though you may not think that, you have to assume that they're correct, and you have to work like they are correct.
Yeah. Councilman?
I would agree with a lot of what Sal said. I was shocked when I got to the council. There did seem to be an implication that the staff was always right. Really, in general, it was kind of staggering to me. And there was sort of this perception that I worked for them in a lot of ways. That's definitely the way it came across. I would say certainly until they got used to me for the first 6 months. It was a fascinating mindset that I didn't totally understand at all. That seems to have changed a lot, so appreciate that and so forth. We've had some discussions about this. I guess I wouldn't go so far as what Sal said about the customer's always right. I've had examples just in the last couple of weeks where people didn't want to pay their water bill or something like that. Well, then the rest of us are paying collectively that water bill, so why are we paying for your water bill? So the customer is not always right, but they do have a right to be heard.
Right.
And too often, frankly, they don't get a call back. I hear too many of those stories from all the accidents and all the customer's fault. I would also say that we're there to defend the customer, though, unless staff can sort of prove, hey, this person just doesn't want to pay their water bill. That's not a reason. If all of us didn't pay our water bill, then we wouldn't have any water bill. It's bad. So at some point, they can definitely be proven wrong. But I do think they deserve their day in court, to stick with my judgment analogy. Yeah. And I do think that's a big role that we play. That it seems like, at least when I first got there, that didn't seem to be the way it was taken. People were pretty surprised. As Sal said, if you're defending the citizen, it's like, well, then you're by definition bashing staff. Not necessarily, but if I have to pick one over the other, I'm picking the citizen until you prove to me that they're wrong. And I definitely think that's a role that we play. I think that's what people expect us to play. And it always pains me because I do think a lot of citizens sort of given up on us collectively, not just us, but politicians in general, that we're ever going to do that. And I think it's a big part of the process.
I would offer too, in regards to that point, what I see, and is your role is to be also part of a community storyteller. You're telling the story of not just your district, but you have the opportunity to educate and enlarge the perspective when you do have those phone calls or somebody pulls you at a ball game or at the grocery store or something, where it's that one-off conversation where you have a chance to, even when they want, their hair's on fire and they want their need met immediately, how you take that opportunity and try to help them have a better understanding about those issues, which sometimes are complicated and there's a lot of moving parts. You are sort of that spokesperson trying to help educate the public in those moments, and often those are unplanned. And I think that I would offer that. I think that's consistent with what you're doing. You're both being an advocate as well as trying to help people understand better the role that you have, as well as what's the role of the city in trying to meet those community needs, whatever those might be.
From my perspective, I'm a Republican, I'm for the Democratic Council, I would say I fulfill the role of loyal opposition.
Okay.
Or at least asking questions. So, well, I understand, some of you are cringing at the very idea. But I would say, I think there is a role for that too, to bring up something. Our communities, I think Bill had mentioned, our districts are different by geography or how many people are there, how spread out it is, and so forth. So we've got different needs. Prop 104 would be one example, but I'm sure there's been others of transportation issues. I do think we represent our communities, which I think is Sal and Bill's point partially.
Right.
And I think that's a role that we definitely play that maybe those would be, to me, the top two, that and protecting the city.
Okay.
I feel that one of the roles in this dialogue is that we all represent a diversity and diverse thoughts on how to get to the solution. And I respect my colleagues when we're having a dialogue and conversation and questioning, because ultimately at the end of wherever you sit, it's either four of you making major decisions, or it's a collective, all 8 of us or 9 of us making a decision. But in getting there, I think it's healthy to have that dialogue in getting to the point and the solution. I think it's a healthy, because then it's a representative of everybody across our city and district. And I ran because it was a nonpartisan. I ran because I wanted to be at a table, to have a voice at the table of representing the people of District 4. So party for me doesn't come into play when it comes to council. What comes into play for me is what's the issue, what are the facts, and what is the better good for our community, and what is best. Does that lie within our city, and is that where we're going? Is that where we're headed? For me, the role of the council is also to respect one another, to listen to one another, also of representing different areas, and to be able to have a good, healthy discussion.
Okay.
And this is leading me back to one of the reasons why I think going through this process is healthy for us, so that we can understand where we're all coming from.
Right. It deepens your understanding.
Right.
Hopefully, and raises your empathy.
Right.
For the challenges that each of you have in your own district, but also citywide. Right. That's an outcome. Yes, Councilman.
Yeah, and just to follow up on what Jim Waring had talked about too, I mean, when you first got on, it was, and Ed, I've got to give you a lot of credit for that, it was really all staff dominated. It's like, how could you even go contrary to staff? But if you look at it, following back as to, who you represent and what your job is supposed to be or not supposed to be, it's good for us to be able to put that all on the table, so at least we get an idea of how people think too. I'd like to know too. But it's the idea of, it's easy to feel comfortable when you're always agreeing with what staff's telling you. I think it's important that we feel uncomfortable when we come into work. It shouldn't be a comfort thing if you're guiding and directing a large organization that's $3.5 billion. It shouldn't be, especially if you want to get to cutting edge issues. Doesn't mean you have to feel that every day,
right.
But it should be uncomfortable. I mean, decisions shouldn't have to always be easy to make.
Right.
They should be difficult. And, you know, it's a natural tendency for any human being to want to go to those comfort levels. But I think that the direction of, you know, when you contradict what staff report says or staff, I mean, they're individuals too. No one says that they're right. You know, no one says that they are. I mean, I believe that the public's right a lot of the times. You know, maybe sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. But overall, you know, it's okay to have that uncomfort level and to challenge and to say, hey, maybe there's another way to look at this. Because to assume that one group or a group think is the right way and the right path, I don't think that's good or healthy for any organization. And they usually fail. In the private sector, they go out of business.
Yeah. You know, that reminds me of that quote, that growth and comfort don't coexist.
Right.
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 Right? People want to grow, they want it to be painless, easy,
Yeah.
convenient. You know, as I say, I'm in shape if round is a shape. You know, some people have a six-pack, I have a 2-liter. You know, I'm really good at joining the gym. How many of you are like me, really good at joining the gym? Anybody? No. Anybody really like me, good driving by the gym? Like, according to my lovely wife, Kristen, we always need new outfits to go work out. Somehow looking better, you work out better. What's the hardest part about getting in shape?
Doing it.
Going to the
pain.
gym, right? Men sweat, women glisten, actually working out.
Hey, yard
That's
work works too.
Pardon me?
Yard work, hiking, those things. It does. Yeah. Yard work, do a couple hours a week on that. You'll do a good job.
Sounds
Think of
good
this,
advice.
think of these sessions as sort of the equivalent. I'm sort of your fitness trainer, so hopefully you have your sneakers on. This is sort of like going to the gym as an organization. You build up capacity to make better decisions by investing time to understand better perspectives in order to arrive at the solutions that you commonly support. You know, you don't get in shape by going to the gym one time, unfortunately, so I hear. And you don't get in better shape by simply taking a pill. Not all these issues that you're going to confront. I would offer to you, money is not this city's most precious resource. Time is. Mm-hmm. On what and where Ed and his staff spend his time can have more of an impact than the budget increasing. That's a lifestyle choice, right? Where we spend our time and on what to whatever outcomes, the choices we make. So I think as you examine these topics, as you get to the solutions later on, it's not always just, and as you mentioned earlier, some of these are not just about spending more money, it's about reconfiguring the time and attention towards whatever that topic is. Then you can achieve a better outcome. There's always those people at the gym, you know, they have the most expensive looking outfits and the best gear, and they're not in any better shape than anybody else. They sort of bought the solution, or so they thought. And I see cities that do that too. They think it's a resource issue. And it's not always a reason. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's not. And I think being able to make that distinction, I would also offer to you before we move on, I think it's healthy for you as an elected official to make the distinction between the problems you can address and the problems you can fix. Because there are issues in any community that you can only address. They're never totally remedied. So you sort of are serving as a little bit of a quasi-Secretary of State a little bit in your district, or trying to distinguish for residents in your district about those issues. Some of those things, no matter what you apply to them, they're never sort of permanently gone. They're always going to be there some way, shape, or fashion. I don't know what those are. I'm not trying to profess I do, but being able to make that distinction. Sometimes government struggles with that distinction. So just a perspective. Other thoughts about the role of the council?
I have a thought, but not necessarily the role of council.
Sure.
The role of staff.
And we're going to talk about the role of the manager and the role of staff. Can I ask? We'll go ahead and start with that. Absolutely. And I'm just going to start off, if it's okay, with what's the role of the city manager? Besides the change in a phone booth and, you know, how that.
I guess I can start this.
Sure.
I think the role of the city manager, I feel the role of everyone on this body, this government body, the role of the city manager, the role of roughly 15,000 city employees. It's a shared responsibility. I think we are all working for the people of Phoenix. And I think it's a way, you know, if we all have to, well, I'll speak for myself. I understand that. I understand that. So when I disagree with something that a department head says, or something that my city manager says, I don't take it as a challenge, and it's something to work with, but I don't say, listen, I work for the people. I don't work for you or bureaucracy or whatever, because that city manager probably feels the same way. I work for the people. I have a responsibility for the people. the department heads feel the same way, our police officers, our firefighters, they feel the same way. You know, everyone here is a public servant.
Okay.
I think it's just a matter of getting on the same page with that side as well.
Okay, good point. Good point. You're right. It doesn't necessarily have to be right, adversarial.
Right.
On the same team, we have different roles, and you know, we do have different ways of going about creating a solution and implementing that solution. But you know, we are all.
And that's one of the beautiful things about democracy, isn't it? Not everybody has the same way to do it. You're trying to blend perspectives to find out what is going to work best for whatever that issue is. Absolutely. Very earnest.
I think the role of the city manager is like a CEO. He
Okay.
daily operations, he hires, fires the staff and stuff.
Okay. By the way, the CEO is also evolving as a term, just so you know. It's also becoming the Chief Experience Officer. A lot of hospitals have have hired Chief Experience Officers. We all have stories to tell about healthcare. We all understand, and I would offer to you that government is an experience provider. You ask people in your residents in your district what they think about living there. They don't tell you what they think, they tell you how they feel. Mm-hmm. So government is an experience provider in that sense, which really just reinforces he's really the Chief Experience Officer, creating not always a favorable experience. You're getting pulled over. That's not always a great experience, right? But by and large, how do people, to Councilmember Waring's comment earlier, how people interact with staff, that's an experience. It's not just a function. And what you hear about is when the experience goes south, doesn't go well. So I'm just sharing that with you just simply as a perspective. So CEO, what else do you see as the role of the city manager? Yes, Councilmember.
I think sometimes a mediator and finding a compromise
Okay.
amongst us and staff are applicable to both parties.
Okay. All right, good. These are all those things not found in his job description, right? This is about his role, whoever's in that seat. I mean, there's a lot about roles. Jobs are about tasks. Roles are about responsibilities, expectations. That's really what we're trying to cover. And if anything else, just reinforce. Reaffirm. Other thoughts? What's the role of the city manager?
He should be, well, one of the roles is to be a really good communicator.
Okay.
And be able to understand, I guess, each council or individual's dynamics and needs that are happening within the decision that is being, conversation that is, or situation that is happening.
Yeah.
And the pressures of not only that individual, but also us understanding our roles to understand the pressures that are placed on him.
That's true.
And be able to then to come to a win-win situation. We won't always get to a win-win situation, but at least we can have the dialogue and discussion of it, and not really to take it at the end of the day personal of that decision.
Okay.
And hold it. So.
All right, good point. What else do you see? Yes, Councilman Gates.
Motivate the employees of the city of Phoenix, help build morale.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember.
Kind of implementation, if the voters pass something or the council.
Right. He's about activating the vision, right? Executing the goals, measuring the objectives, operational execution, all those sorts of things. Other thoughts or ideas? Role of the manager?
Come on, we gave Greg like 2 pages. We got to
Yep.
give Ed at least 2 pages.
I can write larger. Would you like me to write larger, Ed, so we get to those 2 pages? Yes, Councilman.
I think a good city manager, which we're lucky to have one, is an advisor to the council and the mayor as well, and directing us in a way, putting policies in place that will work, given the realities, because there is a bureaucracy. I mean, that is the reality that we face. So how can you make that all work together to accomplish what the voters want?
Yeah. have to have a good political IQ to be a good city manager. Right? Back to what you said about not only communicating, but understanding the sensitivity of those issues and trying to weigh the circumstances, broker those relationships.
Well,
yes, Councilman.
I think that the city, you know, which I agree with everybody here, Ed has been a spectacular city manager, but is also a role of maybe a foreseer.
Okay.
Be able to come forward and say, hey, guys, I think that this is something we ought to be looking at. Not only working with all of us, I mean, I think it's got to be difficult. We're all A personalities, working with 9 A personalities, alphas. I think that's got to be hard on its own. But at the end of the day, but also to be able to say, hey, look, here's where we're going, implement what you have in place, which you've already talked about, communicating that plan to the council and to the city and setting that agenda, but also letting us know when he thinks we're off course. I mean, we've got a few people on staff that do that I'm very appreciative of. I mean, even though there's a couple times I really don't like what they've told me, but they're able to communicate it, like our planning director. I mean, he's come up to me a couple times and says, hey, if you do that, Sal, here's your unintended consequence. You're like, oh, yeah.
Right.
You know, you don't think like that sometimes because you don't see that, even though I don't agree with a couple things he's done, but he's had a logic behind it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And he's actually able to come into your office, and Ed's done that several times to me and said, hey, look, if we head down this path, here's where we could end up with, and it makes you change. Believe it or not, you do start changing course that way. You better change course because, you know, they've been able to communicate a path that may not work.
Right.
So when you've got A personalities, A's are always heading forward. You know, we're at the front of the line, not at the back of the line. So we're always moving forward. It's always good to have someone say, hey, look, if you head down that, you might have a cliff.
And I think to that point, two thoughts. Moving forward, I think is a good jumping off point here is what we're trying to do is distill down what does forward look like. And it shouldn't be 9 forwards. Moving forward, it sounds wonderful. It's a matter of, with some definition and texture, the composition of what that forward looks like with some clarity, right? I think the other thing is what I would say, if I may, without recording it, what you're really looking for the city manager to do is to build and cultivate trusting partnerships with each of you and all of you, right? That trust, because if you're a good advisor, it means you trust their judgment,
Right. Yeah.
you know? Pure and simple, it's about judgment. At the bottom.
Expand that beyond into the business community and be a person who goes over, sells our policies, gives a reason why we're moving forward in that manner. And even if it means going to the Victoria Board, the Chamber, or any other organizations, because I think you're well respected and they want to hear from you, and they take it better from you than
When they take it from us.
Right.
Yeah.
because you're more of an unbiased truth.
And that also works well when he's serving as a spokesperson for all of you, because then there's
Correct.
the weight behind, the gravity behind that, right? That's that symbiotic notion of what you have is that partnership, right? The partnership. Okay.
You're a public safety guy now. Yeah.
Yeah. You're sort of a heat-seeking missile in that role,
Yeah.
right?
You know,
I think
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
he's also a strategist.
Okay.
He needs to have be able to strategize, and it goes back to the foreseeing. He's able to, when we're in the midst of the storm, he's able to be on the outside to see what's happening and advise and be able to say, and certain staff I do listen to because they know more than I do, in the sense of what's coming, what's occurring, and I can't see it. And so I think that's one of the main pieces is also a comfort level of being a strategist, to be able to say, okay, I know you want to get here. This is not the right way of getting here. Let's stop, let's cool, let's look at a different way of how we're going to get to where you want to get to.
Yeah.
So.
In my consulting practice, part of what I do is I write for I write for governing and ICMA and NLC, and I speak at a lot of conferences as well. So I try to follow a lot of research. One of the fascinating things, to your point, that's coming out about successful leaders, regardless of the sectors, is the ability to anticipate and plan accordingly. So I want you to think of this process really as less strategic planning and more scenario planning. You're really creating scenarios over the next 12 to 18 months that you're trying to plan a contingency approach to deal with it. one of the things that 9/11 and definitely the recession did was all those 2020 plans, by the way, it's 2015, so find those on your bookshelf. Those 5-year corporate planning, all those efforts have really gone by the boards because the velocity of change is happening so frequently. So what more and more organizations are doing is they're doing more scenario planning. These factors, this is what we'll do. These situation, this is what we'll do. That, in order, what you need to do that, for local government especially, is to be able to look at trends, extrapolate those, anticipate those, and how are those coming. We're going to do some of that this afternoon for you organizationally and community-wise, but being able to get out in front of some of those is just going to become more mission critical to building the community, as you were talking, as has been mentioned earlier today. But not waiting until they're all refined, and then you want to guarantee. You're dealing with a lot more ambiguity than I think we ever used to. That's just there's more uncertainty than less, I would offer.
You know, I think people are confused with the city manager's role and the mayor's role. A lot of people think it's a strong mayor system because they come from other cities or other countries.
Right.
And they always approach us as council members, well, why can't you hire this person, or why can't you fire that person? Why?
Right.
And that's not our role as a governing body. It's really the city manager. So I think there's confusion out there.
Okay. I think that happens in a lot of cities, regardless of their size. It's back to what Councilmember Waring said. People sort of understand the mayor. I mean, I spent 15 years in city management. About the time I was able to help my parents understand what I did, I left the profession. So it's not always easy for people to understand what you do. And those are people that, you know, are in your family. The community at large sometimes just doesn't have that same, it doesn't have that same appeal that jumps off the page to them, right? Other expectations or roles that you see the city manager having before we move on to the staff?
That he's part of the community, he's engaged in the community, he's connected to the community.
Okay.
Maybe also, you know, he represents the city, and so when he's out representing the city, he represents us.
Yeah.
And even in the, you know, civic engagement
Sure.
and pieces like that, and so.
Yeah, I think you want the city manager, I think all of you are sort of consciously capturing what the temperature is in your district. And I think you want the manager to have sensitivity what that is by being engaged and being able to address it going forward.
Just one word.
Sure.
Because I want to stay consistent. First thing I said, I want to be clear, I think everyone's role, including the city manager, is to be an advocate and represent people.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned, anyone who works for the city or represents the city.
Has that role.
That's all of our role.
Okay. Okay, so now you've identified the headwinds. When you think of the tailwinds, we're not going to try to get down to the project identification in particular, right, just yet. But we wanted to leverage this opportunity while your head is sort of immersed in the headwinds. No pun intended there. What opportunities do you see going forward to address some of these issues? What would you like to see? This starts to kind of create the basis for what we'll do most likely at the second workshop, and that is.
You touched on it earlier. We're doing, Bill's committee. We're doing a lot more with a lot less in a lot of areas. Maybe not as much as we could have. We're using technology to replace.
Okay.
Manual labor. Computers obviously make the individual employee
Right.
more efficient.
Yeah, customer
Right.
service, right?
Yeah. Customer service, I mean,
Absolutely.
what, 20 years ago, no email, no Twitter,
Wasn't that
no
nice?
anything. I mean,
Paper.
You were mailing stuff, I'm sure it was a lot more paper intensive.
Yeah.
Still paper intensive, but there's a lot more immediacy to it now.
Yeah, technology is ubiquitous, and it's going to intensify, especially as, if you notice about automobiles, they've essentially become mobile devices, because who's designing automobiles? Young people who've grown up with technology as an appendage. It's no big surprise there. And as they look to government, as you look at the organization, you're going to use more and more technology to deliver services, as you said. What else do you see as some potential opportunities to translate the headwinds into tailwind? Yes, Councilor.
You know what, we have a lot of these master communities that are building their own neighborhood parks where the city used to be in charge of providing all those amenities. A lot of those homeowners
Private
associations
communities.
are creating their own amenities that
Yeah.
the city doesn't have to provide anymore.
Yep.
Except if they go defunct, and now
Well, you got to keep.
Yeah, more and more private communities, and not just retirement communities.
Right, no.
Right, just sort of
Neighborhoods, yeah.
standalone communities. When I was in Hilton Head Island earlier in November, I was amazed how many private communities they had that were essentially standalone communities. They had their own public safety, they were private streets. So it was interesting the role of the city, the town, because Hilton Head is a town, what their role was as a town government, back to your point. And that's the history there, but the town has reflected what they end up designing and delivering because so many of the other needs were met by those private communities. Kind of interesting, yeah.
Although they may be participating using more social media and less coming to, meetings of the council, the millennials tend to be more engaged than Gen X. I mean, Gen X just kind of checked out. As a member of Gen X, I can say that. But the millennials are much more engaged and could possibly lead to better public policy, and because you get more people involved, sort of by definition, you're gonna have more engaged community and better policy.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
You're seeing a lot more private partnerships out there, public-private partnerships, where universities are teaming up with companies and with cities and schools and all that.
The two fastest growing segments that I see in cities around the nation in economic development that they're targeting are healthcare and higher ed because both are recession-proof. Obviously, the combination ASU U of A campus is a public-private partnership. It's fairly recession-proof. Healthcare, we all see that. That for years that was not. It was more manufacturing, job creation, retail development was for economic development. That has changed dramatically. So there's public-private partnerships.
Scarce resources force you to evaluate what you're doing, prioritize, and frankly get rid of stuff that maybe you shouldn't have been doing in the first place.
Okay. So prioritizing.
I put my golf clubs in the garage sale.
My colleagues are mentioning golf courses. I don't know why.
What's your
Inside
handicap?
joke for those watching at home.
People ask me my handicap, I say my swing. Right, revisiting that. Here, Councilmember Williams?
I think the fact that we have so much public participation gives us an advantage.
Okay.
Keeps us on its toes and keeps it moving forward. Sometimes. There could be disadvantage, but it could also be an advantage. And I think we have a national reputation
Yes.
that has been outstanding, which still serves us well.
Yes, you do. Yeah, that the spotlight is definitely on each of you and the organization in general, and that never fades, right?
I would also say as an elected official, it's a lot easier to do research on your own now, thanks to the internet and so forth. You don't have to necessarily ask a staffer, you don't have to be right by a library or something. I can remember doing my dissertation, you had to go get the budget books for the state from the library. Now it's all online.
Yeah.
You don't have to leave your house. But then you had to trundle over, get these big books, couldn't take them home. Quite a production.
Those reference books.
Now that stuff's available to everybody.
Yeah.
You can get it anywhere in the world, really.
Yeah, and I would say one of your headwinds is transparency. Whatever that means. I just had a discussion the other day with a council member in a city, and they said, we want to do more about transparency. And it sounds good. I'm not sure people really understand yet what that means. But government is trying to figure out that by definition. Does it mean everything you do is on the web? Everything's discoverable? What does that mean? There's really no cookbook on that. In other words, you're trying to figure it out as you go along.
Well, watching missteps by members of the public, younger people, just people in general, people will also modify their behavior. Things that they maybe would have been saying, here's an example, it's a different realm, but it used to be, according to our police chief, we were solving about 40% of the murders. Now they're solving, I think this year was 85 to 90%, somewhere in there. Do you think having cameras around a lot and people with camera phones and so forth might have something to do with that? All the new, DNA analysis, all that different stuff, helped them catch more criminals.
Right.
I mean, that's a pretty radical change when you look at that statistic over maybe 20 years.
Right. Substantial. Yes, Councilman.
A couple of things I think is a tailwind, I think goes what Councilwoman Gates was talking about too, the millennials. I mean, they're just an untapped resource because they're a lot more engaged, they're a lot more demanding, they have higher expectations of everything around you, and that's a good thing because they expect a different world. When you're talking about Gen X, well, that wasn't my generation. I was barely out of it, so I don't want to claim that one. But they did check out, and there's a reason for their distrust. It's because they were failed. I mean, literally, they were failed. whether it's federal all the way down to local governments, they feel that way because they don't feel like, they're left with massive amounts of debt, unstructured financial problems that are, literally problematic for them that they're going to have to fix. But if you look at them as an asset, which they are, that is something that, if you adapt to what it is that they're looking for, I think you're going to be a much stronger community. The other asset I believe that we have is geographic location. If you look at where Phoenix is located in the entire country, we are geographically at a tailwind of, where we ought to be. We don't have the massing, we don't have critical massing, because if you draw a circle around Phoenix, that's pretty much all the population you have, so you can't make mistakes. If you have massing, population massing, you can make errors because you're masks that over time. But for Phoenix, at the very least, we are in a really good place, and we ought to be able to take advantage of it. And Arizona as a whole. Arizona as a whole.
Okay. All right. Yeah, Councilman.
And just to follow up on what Councilman DeCiccio was saying, all the things that made Phoenix grow before the Great Recession, they're all still sort of there. We're still in the Sun Belt. We still have this great climate, et cetera. Don't want to open that topic up. Yeah. But all those things are there. It's just a matter of the economy getting up, right side up again, people getting some equity in their homes so that they can afford to leave Chicago or Detroit or wherever and come here. That's going to come back, and so that's a huge advantage. And so because of that, we do have to prepare for that. People are going to start moving back here. Yeah. It's going to happen, and we need to be prepared for it.
Okay, good.
I think one thing you'd say about millennials, maybe it's the same way of saying what Sal and Bill are saying, they're discerning consumers. They know there are better options out there, or if there are better options, they're going to find them. And the price of products is dropping dramatically. You look at television, one example I think people have used is the time it took for television sets to become ubiquitous, and the time it took for them to have color, and the time for them to grow. It took, 20, 30 years, whereas these phones,
yeah.
It's moving so fast. They'll be obsolete, and about mine a couple of years ago, it'll be obsolete, or it'll be worth $100, and then there'll be some other fancier version. Yeah. It's moving so fast, it's crazy.
Well, I think you make a good point too, and research bears that out on they have a more discernible taste. I think and they also understand their knowledge-free agents. So as an employer, as the city's an employer of 15,000 people, and I do extensive work in my practice on succession planning and leadership development and all that. We see this with all sorts of city organizations. Young people go job shopping, and they're not reluctant to say, what are you going to do to help me develop? And do they overestimate their capabilities? Yeah, like we all did. Anyway, but they will go job shopping. They understand they're going to only stay so as long as they're challenged, and when they're bored, they're gone. I'm sure you see this.
Patient, which I would say is a good thing. If you were patient with, outdated models, like I think people were with their government for a long time, and I do think there was apathy for a while. Now people, I think the patience is all gone, which I think is a good thing. It may be considered a headwind to some. But
and I think what that does is present you as the governing body is to say, being sensitive to that demographics preferences, how does that then give you opportunity to reset or redesign the focus of the city in particular areas organizationally and operationally? Programs or projects, or it's not just going to be more of the same.
Back to the staff council discussion we had in the previous session, I guess I would say I'm always surprised at how many times I've heard there's just no possible way we can do X. And then it may take a while, but eventually it gets done. That drives me more crazy than probably anything, because you could have done it, you just were telling us you can't, and now it took a while, we got angry customers for no reason. Hopefully we can tamp down on that over time, but it happens fairly frequently, and it's very irritating.
Yeah.
But our customers are not going to wait on us. They're going to get mad, they're going to write letters to the other, they're going to go on Facebook, and they should.
Right. Yeah, I think they're going to cast more spotlights on the city, on government just in general, in a way that's...
They're right to do so.
Right, and it's
right to do so.
Right, and in some respects, it's unprecedented to put that spotlight. Government has typically not been... It's more than its share of public attention, but not that way.
And people, I think, in our positions are less patient than they would have been, because I'm not going to own that. If the airport screws up, and I had no knowledge of it, and now I'm owning this mess, I'm going to be like, make a change and find somebody else who's not going to create a mess. Okay. I'm not going to, there's no way I'm going to lose one voter over that. That's just not acceptable, period. So we're less patient too, which again, I think is a good thing.
Okay.
Because it is that role, I mean, if you look at it, yeah, we're not here, I keep saying this, but
Yeah,
we're
to
not here to
defend-
protect
yeah,
the
exactly,
staff
status
members
quo,
too. We
we're
want to
not.
make it work. But at the same time, whenever there is a problem like that, it has to be fixed.
Mm-hmm.
And it can't just be glossed over or anything else. It needs to be fixed and it needs to be immediate. And that is what the expectation of the public is.
Right.
And we should be accommodating that. That's our role.
Okay.
Totally true.
Right.
I think one of the tailwinds is the evolving change of diversity.
Okay.
And that the millennials, I think I'm saying it right, that demographic is a different demographic than what it was 20 years ago.
Right.
And so acknowledging that and realizing they also have the buying power and voting power, and really embracing the diversity of this country and city is I think we need to look at that and how we approach it.
Yeah. It is definitely an opportunity. It's how you blend that and leverage that with that demographic. That's what I was saying earlier about the demographic data. Sometimes it's not real sexy. It seems kind of flat. But when you start to pull it together, it starts to tell you the composition of the profile of this community. And it may be different than what it was historically. And then what does that mean for the city as a service provider? How does it shift in response to that adaptable market? Because it's not just more of the same. And so you essentially now you're serving markets. You're not just citizens of Phoenix. There are separate, not only constituencies, there are separate markets within that. And that generational data starts to reveal that as well.
And I think it goes to a point of the job shopping, that it's a different mindset and generation in the sense of, I guess I'm Generation X, where I look at job shopping in a very different way in the sense of I look at it as, does it have health benefits? Does it have retirement?
Yeah.
I look at certain things in order for me before I'm going to jump.
Right.
The millennials, they tell me, I'm not concerned about health care. I'm not concerned about retirement. All I'm concerned about is getting a good pay and getting what I need, training I need in order to move to the next one.
And opportunities, right?
Right.
They want more flexibility. So they're going to carry those preferences both in elected officials' roles as well as, again, back to how does the city both identify that and then respond to that with services and programs organizationally. I know Ed feels those pressures from his staff, as well as externally, which mentioned earlier. How does that reposition the city? Not entirely, right, a 180, but there are segments of different departments that unless they're responsive to that shifting market, they lose sort of customers, right?
And how do you look at it in hiring capacity? That when you hire, the anticipation or the expectation is they're not going to sit here for another 20 years.
No, people aren't going to wait, right?
They're not going to wait. So what is it?
Well, the other thing about that, what we're seeing in research is more and more younger people will do job sharing. So they'll work 2 days for a city, 2 days for a county, and or 2 days for another jurisdiction and 1 day for a nonprofit. And with the portability of healthcare, it's much easier to do it that way because they see themselves as working for themselves, right? So,
right.
Yes.
Well, one of the things that's funny is I was watching PJ in my office over there, who's a millennial, literally shaking his head. Correct. I mean, that is what they're looking for. And so there's multiple things. One, there wasn't that much of a difference between the Generation Xers and the baby boomers. There really was more blended, okay? There is a stark difference from a millennial to the next generation. They're stark. It's not even close to being the same. Their expectations, their wants, the whole thing are completely different. And as a changing city, one, it's a tailwind. If we want to encourage those creative minds to come in and look at the world differently, then that means we have to be repositioning how we view their needs. I mean, right now, if you look at it, everybody, you got to have a pension, you got to have this, you got to have those. They want portability.
Right.
They want to be able to pick up and leave after a couple years or 3 years, and that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing if that's what they want to do. But if you want that creativity and that different mindset to come into an organization, you have to create different structures. One, for those that are here, that are my age or young, a little bit younger maybe, and then those that are your millennials. If you want to bring those people on, You've got to be able to do that. You know, that's one part of it. The second part of it deals with, you know, and PJ brought this up to me too, it's their expectation, I mean, how you target things, how you go after certain functions. Like even on education, he was telling me that in Germany, they make a determination to focus on technology. And in technology, you get certain types of things that are taken care of on your health, or not your health care, but your education. You know, they'll literally subsidize those individuals that go in there. Likewise, we've got to be able to focus on what it is that they want and look and direct that way if we want them, if you want them part of the system. But the problem is people our age don't, you know, we don't want that new thought.
Yeah.
You know, that's a struggle.
I think in all this generational talk, I think you, and we'll do this at a future workshop, and I encourage you to think about how does that translate to revised public policies? What is it about building the community that's going to require you to shift your thinking, enlarge your thinking? Because what the outcomes for the goals that you adopt for 2016-ish, I would think in some respects should reflect those shifting market forces, or else you're essentially creating goals that were reflective of trends that are more comfortable to deal with. Back to that growth and comfort don't coexist. Getting comfortable with that ambiguity and understanding that uncertainty and not being derailed by that in your decision making, I think is mission critical what you have the opportunity to do. And that's challenging, absolutely, yes.
Based on what you just said too, and I think as we evolve, we have already made the decision that the city doesn't have to do it all. We can go public and get services from them. And I think as you see certain, like take for instance engineers, there's going to be a real shortage of engineers very quickly. No one's doing that anymore. I think the fact that we've already made that leap, that we know that we could hire for specific duty for a certain time and then move on, that we have that ability to do that. We're already practicing it in many ways, and I think that's very important because traditionally you hire it and it has to be in staff, and
right.
We're not doing that.
Yeah, it's the rise of the contingent workforce is increasing. Sort of seasonal employees and beyond.
Yeah, as the need arises,
right.
you hire to fit whatever the need
right.
is, and then
they're done.
move on. Yeah, they're done and you move on.
And it usually tends to reflect my economic cycles, which, you know, that's kind of the way it is in our state, yes.
You know, even the reuse and repurposing buildings and even departments, I mean, for example, our libraries, our Burton Bar Library downtown, we have College Depot that provides college information, how to get scholarships, how to register to any university or community college. We also have the Hive there that if you're an entrepreneur, you can go in there and come up with creative ideas. We have workforce development in some of our libraries where we have computers, so instead of just having the computers to check out books and look up resources, you can actually fill out a resume. And so we have repurposing our libraries for not just researching and looking up books, but also workforce development, college, and all that kind of stuff.
And that's part of a national trend too. Libraries are quickly becoming the new version of community centers. As all those services you described, and that's so that blending of what was a community. You had a community center, then you had a library. That's those functions are now blending into one facility, because it's the need of the public when they go there. They need a child care while they look for a job, and then maybe look for books, and then there's other things, and then maybe it's a blood drive. I mean, they become real sort of the face of communities in a way that I think historically they hadn't been. It was more of a passive facility where people had to go to. Now they're really delivering services that are meeting community needs, much like community centers, and then some. So,
but, you know, going back to that repurposing, I mean, even our departments where I know that Sal was really instrumental about our whole licensing. If somebody wants to open up a business, they would have to drag that out for months. Now it's a fast pass, you know, you can, it's a faster process. So I think that listening and thinking outside the box of these new ideas and looking at the best practices of other cities and how do you attract businesses by providing good customer service, using technology. Maybe if you don't have the inspectors at the city level, then why don't we use other resources that are out there in the private sector, right?
Yeah. And that is somewhat unconventional, right? However, it can be effective, right? Just because it's different doesn't mean it's bad. It's just different. It kind of collides with that status quo thinking of we've always done it that way. That's the challenge.
If you think about it too, and Michael was critical on it too, but the fact of the matter is what you do is you look at what's happening in the marketplace. There's no way you can hire enough people or hire enough skill sets to handle an economy that's moving so quickly. And even though we were in a slow market at the time when all these things started to happen, it's just literally setting up for what's going to happen. So, hospitals may be the hot thing right now in healthcare and those things, but to hire people that are skilled in that one field, then to hire enough of them to be able to do that, then that means you're going to be lacking in another market that can change quickly. So by doing what Councilwoman Williams was talking about earlier, is being able to hire on the outside. I didn't even think about the engineer. That's exactly what occurred there. We can pick and choose, but being able to hire what's happening in the marketplace and allowing those entities to go to them, you can now move an economy a lot faster,
right.
And people can pick and choose the direction that they want to go in a lot faster, even though it was fast here, but it also allows that economy to change a lot faster and allows us to adapt to a changing market, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, one of the things I've noticed with your colleagues in other cities, their financial acumen has definitely intensified, that they're looking more now at not just budgets and financial measures. They're also looking at what are considered leading indicators and lagging indicators. The stock market is a leading indicator. Unemployment is a lagging indicator. But they're also looking at city finances through that same lens. What does this start to portend? What kind of future does this portend revenue channel-wise? What does this portend expenditure-wise, as opposed to what's our cash reserve and our bond rating? It's a much more closer examination of what those finances start to reveal, because you're trying to get out in front of those trends and not just sort of look at them as a kind of factually, empirically, but more critical thinking applied to those financial indicators. I've even seen when the finance profession is undergoing that transformation, more harder questions are being asked to those finance professionals about those types of things, because policymakers want to have a better handle on the future and what these trends sort of forecast. So just a point of view. Yes.
Another thing, I think the fact that this council and staff have recognized the need for new infrastructure, that's going to be important for economic development as well as our citizens. And we're already moving to do a lot of replacement, expansion, and coordinate that with economic development so that the most likely we will have it available and move-in ready.
Yeah.
And then I think another thing is the fact that I think our Public Works is being very innovative on how to reduce items going to the landfill and repurpose them by putting out incubators for new development.
Okay. Lots of opportunities, lots of new ways. Business as usual is over. I think that's an understatement. And as you look at the future, it's going to be adopting, it's about doing things different and doing different things, how you embrace the future. Yes?
And that is a great example where we are meeting at the international level.
Right.
We're really on the cutting edge.
Right.
To the list, I would add our open space, our outdoor space.
Okay.
When we asked our citizens, what do they love about Phoenix? That was the #1 answer that we received. And when we think about what differentiates us from other cities, that is one area where they can't compete with us.
Right. Other thoughts about tailwinds? I promise you we wouldn't drain the swamp, right, as far as facilitation, so we're not going to talk about things to the nth degree. The goal here was to capture what was on top of mind, push your thinking a little bit. As the mayor said earlier, try to thread the needle on a few of these things without getting down to the solution base, but to really generate some momentum for this goal-setting process. We've covered quite a bit of terrain this afternoon. Right. We looked at how this process is going to be different than Plan Phoenix, what your expectations are of this, and we're going to record those and get those back out to you here in short order. We talked about the concept of governance, a topic that you probably don't get a chance to examine very often, the different roles each of you play on a regular basis. And hopefully your takeaway from that is where those lanes separate and where they merge, because they do merge at certain points. We then got into the headwinds, good discussion around that, and trends, economic trends, social trends, cultural trends, all those things, at least trying to identify those. Then we're wrapping up here with the tailwinds. What do you see as some opportunities, some practices currently in place that you want to do more of, maybe some new opportunities. But my question is for you as we wrap up is, what do you want to see? Again, this is sort of exploratory. I have some thoughts. Ed has some thoughts. We want to make sure and sample your opinion as well. What would you like to see at the next workshop, building on the momentum from today? And we expect to schedule that sometime in the first quarter of 2016. And we don't have that set yet, but we're trying to at least create some momentum. We know we're going to lose some over the holidays when people get amnesia by the time they come back in the new year, but we're going to do some in the next workshop in the first quarter. But I'm curious to know, as we craft this workshop for the next one, what are some ideas or what are some thoughts that you want to make sure that are addressed in that next workshop? Understanding we're not to the solution mode today. That may be what you end up doing at the next workshop, is starting to identify at least a sketch list of some of those priorities before you get down to the 2 or 3 or 4. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give you at least my perspective where I'd like to see accomplished at the next one. I think this is good for us to have this, and I've learned a lot from other council members too, but I think at the end of the day, we really need to get to the solutions, and what we see at least is give some ideas of what are out there, and I'll throw some out. One, on the budget, looking at expenses, because your expenses, we have a growing revenue stream in the city, but our expenses exceed that. So how do you deal with that? I mean, how are you budgeting your expenses? The second part of it is looking at the world in what I call buckets. That's from Alex Tauber days. He's a friend of ours from Stanford. But at the end of the day, look at things as, your internal bucket, your external bucket. Your internal bucket deals with your budgeting primarily because everything comes down to money. If you don't have the money, you're not going to do anything. And then it's your restructuring, some of the things that we looked at. How do we re-engage? How do we bring in these millennials, these new ideas? And then how do we address the changing population of what they're looking for? And I think Councilwoman Williams brought up a really good point. We even made those changes in the engineering department. On the external side of it, that's the internal side. Okay. Then the external side of it deals with, how do you want to see us be able to compete in this global economy? It's not us that are competing. It's going to be those private businesses, and it's not just the bricks and mortars anymore. It's going to be those millennials that are going to be walking around with this. This is their office. This is their business. They do everything on this, and it's going to be a different mode too. So how do we get faster? I mean, if you look at government is basically a restrictor. They just are. I mean, everything we do is about restrictions. So the question is what are those restrictions that we are doing currently today that we don't need to be doing? Are there things that we could be doing better on that? Are there things that we could be doing faster? So what kind of restrictions can we start relieving the public of? But when you deal with the internal part of it, I should have brought up one more point, I just saw my note on this. We ought to be looking down on some of the things that Councilman Waring was talking about, those functions of government, dealing with, is this, these are your basic questions. One, is this function something that we should be doing? If it isn't, then that's an easy no, then you find a way to move it on. If it's a yes, then the next question ought to be, is that a function that we should be doing as, employees, or is this a function that somebody else could do for them? That would deal with your internal. And so the other part of it deals with, we talked about the budgeting. How do we deal with the taxes and fees? Because if you look at the private sector, it can't just naturally go out there and raise prices. We do that, okay? We can. We do it because we're the government. But in the private sector, if you're, a small shop, you can't just raise your fees on that. The other issues that we need to be dealing with when you're dealing with your fiscal issues, dealing with your pensions. I mean, that's been by far the overriding issue, and it's not fair to be always saying that's their responsibility. It's ours. We're the ones that are in charge of that. That means you have to sometimes create different models here to be able to deal with it in the future, whether it's 10 or 12 years from now. When it comes to, let's say, even affordable housing, looking at different models on that, is it really something that the City of Phoenix should be doing, or is it something that the private sector should be doing? Is it a better way to be able to serve your public? I mean, those are the types of functions I'd like us to take a look at as we move forward.
Okay, great. Councilmember Pastor, did you have something you? No?
No, not yet.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman. Other ideas that you want to make sure are?
Yeah, I think I'd like to figure out a way to maximize our resources. For example, the Avenida Broadway, which is a street improvement in my district, we brought in 40 different individuals that were actually involved in that project, and there was no communication between the departments.
Oh.
So people are complaining that we're tearing up the street 3 or 4 times, and what a waste of money to actually go in there, tear up the street, put in a storm drain, then come again and tear up the street to put in a water pipe.
Sure.
So instead of communicating with each other, which would be what you talked about earlier, is time is the biggest resource that we have. Sometimes we just don't take the time to meet and to collaborate our resources we have within the city, seeing that there's 24 different departments.
Right.
It's hard, so how do we maximize the resources we have at the city? The other thing too is I liked what Councilwoman Pastor talked about, is having the right people in the right positions. Because sometimes what we do is that if there's a department that's being cut, we just move those individuals into a different department that maybe they don't have that expertise for that position, but they're being trained on the job. So how do we make sure we have the right people in the right positions and that we can maximize their talents? And at the same time, how do we make sure that we're paying them the right salaries, I mean, that they should be getting? If they're doing a good job, then we should award them. If they're not doing a good job, then there should be some consequences too. So there should be pluses and minuses on that too.
Okay, good. Thank you. Yes, Council.
Sometimes the best decision makers also have the best data, and so I would love if you would look at the information we've given you and just see if there are other cities that have
Okay.
data we ought to see or other information to make sure that we have that competitive edge and we learn from other people's work.
Sure.
Many of us have certain industries we spend a lot of time with, and we may be familiar with their data, but we rarely as a group come together and try to make sure we're staying on top of things.
Okay, good. Good point. Yes.
And building upon that, not only data, but maybe other innovative ideas that relate to some of the headwinds that we talked about and some of the tailwinds might be helpful. Things that, experiences that you've had that,
Sure.
Because I think we focused on a few specific, obviously demographic challenges, that's one we talked about a lot, and how some other cities are addressing that.
Yeah, I can definitely do some of that. Other topics you want to make sure are tackled at the next workshop?
So when you talk about the changes, I mean, if you look at the expansion of the airport, we moved out 4 Hispanic communities out of that area. If you look at the downtown, that we're growing like gangbusters, but at the same time, we had a community that was here that's now being priced out of living in downtown, from a house that was costing them anywhere from $300 to $800 a month for a mortgage. Now you have $1 million condos being built. So how are we sensitive to growth also, and respecting those individuals that have lived there for centuries, right? Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Other thoughts?
I think for future workshops, we need a piece of, to start the framework. Before, Councilman DeCiccio mentioned very specific areas that he wanted to look at, but I think we all have to get there, and if we want to,
Sure.
So I think we really need some framework around that, and understand our next steps as to our future workshops of how we're going to get there. I go back to his internal and external. There are some internal situations where I think can be changed, and really look at, I guess, a chain of communication of how communication can get to us. We receive we're inundated with a lot of information, and sometimes information overload, but I would like to figure out how we could develop maybe some type of form or some type of process where it's very easy to read, get to, understand, and then move. Me personally, I would like to, instead of reading each different sections, I would like to know what RFIs are going out, what RFPs are going out, What are they thinking about for the future? A lot of times in the internal, my frustration, and I don't know if anybody else has this, my frustration is that people show up at my door 2 days before we're going to vote on something. And I'm a processor. I'm very deliberative in the way I get to my decisions, and I do research. And so sometimes when they're at my door, I'm just like, it's too late. I've already figured out where I'm going. And a way of communicating in advance so that then I'm able to follow the steps or the process. We have our committee meetings, but I sit on 4 committee meetings, and I'm inundated with just those meetings and try to catch up with the other committees, and sometimes I'm not able to do that. And so I would like to see a process, internal process for us to get information.
Okay.
I think adding on to that, I think one of the challenges we have, actually it's probably Ed's challenge, is getting the departments to communicate with each other and coordinate with each other. Because it is a constant, I mean, I'm always talking to one of the departments about, okay, but did you know that this street's going to be under construction? Oh, well, that's not where we were putting the water line. Well, you know, they need to talk to one another or somehow come together, and if they have priorities, I don't know if you have internal workshops or something, so they talk.
And the goal from this, the way it was scoped and the way we responded, was once council has created essentially the framework and some of those items on the list that will be then thinned out even more, the intent is for Ed and I to put together an agenda for a workshop that I would then facilitate with directors to help them delineate more detail to then bring back to you. And I'm sure in that workshop, Ed and I will talk about the agenda for that. We can definitely cover some of the topics, and I'm sure he's hitting on these on a regular basis anyway, but we can figure out how to couch some of these recommendations you have within the confines of these topics that you're actually exploring. So it has some context. When you talk about communication, the examples you gave were wonderful. Right. Then it has context. It seems a lot more concrete than just do more of it. Well, what does that look like? So that is what we intend to do. We wanted to make sure that we made sufficient progress with you all before we convene that team, because we need something essentially from you all to draw from to craft that agenda. I hope that makes sense to you. So there is some of that, and that's the way it was scoped, and that's the way we responded was, you do some work, we take it to departments, we work with them, we bring it back to you. So there is some of that back and forth in this kind of setting, in a workshop type setting. So I just wanted to share that with you.
We're the one that gets the calls that said, you just paved the street, why are you tearing it up?
Exactly.
Right. Those are I just wanted to share some of the mechanics of this process. So, Councilman?
You know, I was just thinking that going off with the Council Member Pastor was talking about, just our budget alone, I mean, we have 24 plus departments, and at the end of the year, we actually get a big binder like that with our budget, and we have to go through it. I mean, the organization I work for, we have to present to the Board of Directors our budget, our proposals. We don't do that as a city of Phoenix. I mean, we can ask questions if we have questions, but I think there needs to be some type of an operational planning process. If it's a dozen different departments, or somehow, some way, if it's through our subcommittees where they present to that subcommittee that department belongs to their proposed budget. Because what we do is we take it out to the community, and depending on how organized that group is, if there's an organized group for bikes or parks or whatever it is, right? That's the group that goes out there, yells and screams and gets the funding for it. But there might be some other funding in there that doesn't have an advocacy group out there advocating for that fund. So I'd like to sit down and figure out a way so it's a living document for the future, that somehow, some way, the city manager can go to those directors and say, hey, you have to present a presentation, has to be this long, has to have these details to the council, so we can understand what's the budget we're passing. Because a lot of times there's hidden stuff in there that we pass, and at the end of the year, why in the heck did you guys pass this? Oh, it's
and I wrote down the budget process, which I think is all encompassing too.
Actually, it's better than it was.
Yeah, no, it's getting
But the trick is, because they do a, this year and proposed, but you have to go line by line and compare to see what went up and what went down, and it takes probably about 24 dedicated hours to go through the entire thing.
Yep.
Where if they could just put decreases in red and additions in green or something, so you could spot it right away, that would be a significant help. And then presenting it, I think, is a good idea,
Right.
too.
Okay. Other thoughts about topics for the next workshop, or? Okay, well, I want to say, let me just do a time check. I think we're a little ahead of schedule. Yeah, we are ahead of schedule, which is good. Again, the time frame was sort of a best guess, an estimate. We wanted to be mindful of that. I want to say thank you for your time and attention today. I know you're all busy people. I hope that you found today was a good investment of your time and your effort. I know we're exploring things for some people painfully slowly. You know, we're sort of holding it up to the light and giving it an X-ray. That's the benefit that you don't always get at council meetings, even at study sessions. And that's where, when you reach to the second or probably the third workshop, where you really refine that list going forward, it has a lot more substance behind it that you've given so much thought and the context, and you're not just getting there sort of at an accelerated rate. So, unless there's anything else, yes, the public comment?
The idea is potentially to discuss some of these specific items at a future.
At the next one?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would turn to our city attorney and say, if we identify specific policy issues that we're going to discuss, I don't think we can notice this meeting the way we noticed it now. I think we owe it to the public to notice it as if we're discussing these very specific policy issues. The public is more aware of
Sure.
There may be some people in the community that want to talk about in much more detail particular policy issues identified. And if we just leave it as a strategic planning session, now that we've gone this far, I think we might be in trouble. So I'll leave it to you to make that determination, but these are there's a lot of specificity what was provided, Mr. Ibarra. If the intent is, we know we're going to talk about those in advance as a body, I think we have to notice this meeting up a lot differently we've noticed it up this time around.
We'll get to the bottom of that.
Yeah.
Is this considered a policy? This is,
You're-
I would like
You're-
to know.
The idea is to
I
reach
want to,
consensus, and if it's the intent is to reach consensus on a policy issue, we owe it to the public to let them know what we're talking about in more detail. So I don't think
Okay.
it's just,
Okay.
for this meeting, we were okay,
Right.
but now that we've drilled down a little bit more,
Yeah.
and we're getting more specific,
Yeah.
these are publicly noticed
Sure.
meetings.
Yeah.
It may, I'm not making it too far afield, I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have to notice it in a different way, identifying the issues that are likely to be discussed now that we're kind of on record as to what they are. Call that election.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's.
I think it's going to be a very 8 or 9 or 10 more specific issues.
Right, and we'll have other items on the agenda as well, not to this, but again, part of this process is formal, part of it is organic. And we wanted to be amenable to the organic side. That's why we asked you questions about what you're looking for from the process and then what you're looking for the workshop. So Ed and I will convene and we'll put our heads together and craft the agenda for the next workshop now that we have more detail and we sort of understand. We're going to go back and reflect on your expectations too and make sure the process supports that. We just didn't know that going into it, right? It was more exploratory. So to your point, there is more definition.
The attorney on the posting,
Yeah.
sure, gives us adequate notice to the public and allows.
Yeah, I don't know, I certainly would like to consult about that as well, because I want to make sure that I'm comfortable with the
Sure.
level of detail in posting now that we're kind of drilling down to getting some more identification of specific policy issues that we're going to
Sure.
Discuss.
Okay.
Okay. We have one member of the public wishing to speak. He was here earlier, Joseph Benesh. I think he's no longer here. I'm guessing if we notice this up differently next time, we might have a lot more public involvement in this process, that people knew about the subject matters in which we're likely to drill down and potentially reach consensus on as a council.
That's good. We should.
We want to start drilling.
I think the only thing I would offer to that, Mayor, about the
Yeah.
input is how
You structure that. Because I think the discussion has a real momentum and a flow, so whether it's the beginning of the meeting or at the end of the meeting, but I think them sort of stepping in as you're discussing it, I think we will lose some of that the fluidity of that discussion when we get into these. But I'm just talking about the mechanics.
Generally, as a council, we err on the side of allowing the public to discuss each policy matter as it comes up.
Okay.
And so my intent is not to change that for purposes of this. I think we owe it to the public to allow them to
Sure.
discuss it in real time
Okay.
public participation.
Sure,
and
absolutely,
that's a
yeah.
higher priority than whatever momentum we're trying to create, at least as the
Okay.
leader of this body.
Yeah, it's up to all of you how you want to tackle it.
I guess just one question I would have is it your intent as the facilitator that we would actually be, quote, again, and I think you stated at the beginning that you certainly had no intent that there would be votes.
Right.
And I don't think anyone objected to that. Is it your intent that in this next workshop, we would even be close to sort of reaching a consensus?
I think that would be.
Could that happen in the next meeting, or how's?
I think so. I think it's a matter of, because then what we intended to do between the second and third workshop was take some of that information, that what you created as a general framework, the list, to then take that back to staff and put some detail to that and then bring that back to you for even more refinement. So I think the intent for that next workshop is to get to some of those key policy areas without voting on it, but to build that consensus. So, no, not to vote. That's what we're going to try to build that consensus around those items. I think when you add voting to this, I think it changes the dynamics in a way that we've lost what we're trying to create here. But again, Ed and I can talk about that. He can talk with some of you. But I think when all of a sudden you're going to vote on it, then now it becomes just another item. Will this be maybe adopted formally at a council meeting on the voting? I would think that will eventually happen at a council meeting. But I think for this process, voting typically doesn't happen even in any of the workshops.
So
it's more of building that consensus.
Let me make sure I'm clear too, because
Sure.
I want to make sure that nobody wastes time and we're always heading in the right direction, or any direction, just moving forward, right? So essentially, maybe to give direction to staff and then have staff come back to us with proposals that work that way. Is that where we're going on this then? So let's say we take up the controversial issue of budgeting.
Okay.
Okay, which it is, but it shouldn't be because it matters. Then to give staff our ideas and then have them bring a proposal forward at some time in the future. What I don't want to have happen is, and I'll be very disappointed, is if we end up wasting our time. You know, I don't want to go through this machination here. I've got other things I can do too. If we're
Right.
not going to be actually looking at doing something, arriving at some level of consensus, even though we may not all agree on things, there are going to be some issues that we are going to arrive at consensus on and move those things forward.
Right.
You know, I'd like to see that. We don't always have to agree, but those things that we do agree on, I'd like to move those things forward. The other part of it, you know.
So, I'm sorry, yes, yeah, that's the intent of this
Right.
process. And remember what prompted this process was you wanted to see a more well-defined list based on your most recent discussion with Ed during his review. You wanted that list. So the intent here is to discuss, create, and implement whatever gets generated from all of you as a governing body, not just to talk about it.
Well, I'm going to be real direct. I want to see the implementation of it,
Absolutely.
too. So if we do arrive at that, we head in a direction, I'd like to see us move that way.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just, you know.
Right. And
I'm not here to
that's
waste
the
time
that's
creating
the discussions Ed and I have had. This is all about implementation. To get to that point, obviously you're deliberating, collaborating, identifying, refining, and then it's all about implementation. Absolutely, yeah.
We're at the baby steps of this process. So let's just, we took our first steps and
Right.
let's get to our second steps, and then we can continue on by the third to say, well, where are we at? Are we ready?
Right.
Let's get there first. You're at the finish line for me.
No, because I'm over there because I don't want to let anyone have any unexpected
Right.
results, what I expect to see at the end of this, because that, you know, I don't want anyone to think that I'm not going to not go in that direction.
Right.
I'm just
Okay.
laying it on the table, just
Yeah.
like everyone, even in the baby step stage.
Yeah.
I don't know what the baby step stage means. I mean, this is, you asked for
Right.
input we'd like to see on the next one. People have provided, this is the list.
Right.
I think those are suggestions.
Suggestions, yeah.
I think those are suggestions. I don't think that's the list. Those are some of the things that we all threw our ideas out of possibly looking at that, but I just don't think that's the list. I think eventually what will happen is it'll get refined, or do we want to discuss this? No, yes, no. Let's do let's get to where we need to get to in our second meeting.
My impression is different. I apologize that this list that is on that page is now somehow going to be discussed with our professional staff. I thought there was a staff meeting next, or with the leadership.
More than likely, we had anticipated after the next
Okay, what are you gonna do with this, I guess?
Ed and I we weren't sure what we were gonna get on the list, right? So this is the organic sides. So we got a list. So Ed and I are gonna discuss this and determine, do we bring this list, how much detail we bring this list? I think, and also I would anticipate affording you the opportunity at that next workshop to add to this list. That it's not that you're over and done with because it didn't occur to you today, but to give you time to get the minutes out to you, the summary out to you, to give you some chance to digest the day and the material, and then give you a chance to process that, reflect, talk, and then come back to the next workshop, I'm sorry, and add to this.
Add to the list. You're not gonna subtract from the list.
We're not going to subtract to the list, but
I'm trying to get the issue about, we have to notice it up correctly for open meeting law for
Right.
purposes. So in terms of the policy issues that, the universe of policy issues that apparently we're going to discuss at the next meeting are based upon this list.
well, I would.
You have to do that for purposes of noticing up the meetings. So the
If,
public's aware of what
what's the issue if somebody brings up a topic that was not listed on the list at the next workshop? If somebody brings up,
If the intent is reach consensus, we can't, it's not a properly noticed issue. We gotta make sure that maybe there's a separate meeting has to occur between how this process works and the appropriate following of open meeting law. But the idea is if you reach consensus, and the goal of reach consensus, you can't do it in a way that the public hasn't been properly noticed up. It was what we owe the public as part of open meeting law.
and I think we just want to make sure and afford everybody an opportunity to reflect on the list and not so much take the list and go craft the agenda today, the notice from today, but work out a process where we can allow either Ed and I or myself speaking with each of you and say, you've had a chance to process it now, to what you want to add to the list, or the staff can do that, and then that list is then noticed. But I just want to make sure if people didn't bring something up today that it's off limits to bring up at the next session, because I think we're then limiting the public discussion.
I think we're going way too deep into something that we can, whatever briefing is going to occur, you can bring it up to us in executive session, as far as I'm concerned, so we all hear it at the same time, how this thing's going to be noticed. What I don't want to do is create these steps that, one, we're going to do it right. Staff's going to make sure it's right. Council member, mayor's going to make sure it's done right. But at the end of the day, you know, I don't want us to get bogged down into something that we're going to be able to handle. Okay, we're getting into a debate, Mayor, that literally is important, but at the end of the day, we're going to be able to solve that.
Okay.
So debating it here today doesn't work.
This is not an appropriate matter for executive session. This is not an executive session item, so these are all publicly noticed.
How to agendize?
I don't think we need to.
Then we'll meet with us.
My point is
However
that we're
we
in
do
a
it.
wonderfully
Okay.
awkward position.
That's fine.
So,
In that we've had this initial brainstorming meeting.
Right.
The next session is to begin to build consensus. We have to properly notice it. That's not a side issue. That's a core responsibility for me as mayor, certainly. I hope
Sure.
everybody agrees with that.
So-
that we properly notice it. So if we're going to talk about particular items that we're going to try to build consensus around, we have to notice it appropriately.
And I just want to.
That's what we owe the public.
Sure, and I'm not disagreeing with you, Mayor, about these items. I'm just trying to make sure that if something occurs to one of you between now and the next workshop, that somehow it's afforded you have the opportunity to discuss it as a governing body. That today was not sort of you're done. And I think we can work out the mechanics of that between now and that next workshop. We've got a few months. We'll make sure whatever items, I just want to make sure that you're afforded those opportunities. We
So-
want to definitely comply with the open meeting law, and that's not an issue.
And I'll clarify, staff is not going to add to this list.
Yes.
We're
Right.
going to take a look at this, Patrick and I, and we'll take a look at the list. We'll
Right.
kind of put it in buckets, and then that'll come back to you
Right.
to work on more. But we're not going to add or
Right.
subtract things from it.
Right.
Okay.
So I want to be able to have the ability to add to this list. So however that is noticed,
happens
however
the next
it's
meeting.
made up,
Right.
or however I trust that we will notice this correctly. The public will know,
Okay.
and we will get to where we need to get to.
Okay.
And we've all heard from each other. We all have different ideas now, because we've been, hearing what others have been saying. You want to be able to add that and digest it.
Right.
That would be common sense.
So what happens to this video? Does it get played on Channel 11, so it's public
does.
knowledge
Yes.
Yeah.
immediately?
They have to go back and get it all set. I'm not sure if it's tonight or tomorrow, but as soon as they
Ah,
can get it
well,
put together, it'll be
soon.
on Channel 11, yeah.
Yeah,
Within a
so
week, yeah.
I guess getting the point, Mayor, they would have some inkling of what we're discussing just by virtue of that being publicized.
Yeah.
I respect that, but that's not what the open meeting law requires. Yeah,
Right.
we have a particular issue moving forward now that we've talk about some specific policy issues.
Sure.
If we know we're gonna talk about the next one, we have to list out those issues that we're going to try to discuss and potentially reach consensus on.
Right.
If there's gonna be another open brainstorming session, we probably have to have a separate agenda item on that, but we can't talk about it in a way in which we attempt to reach consensus, otherwise it could be a violation of the meeting law. I don't mean to hyper-technical, but that is what the open meeting law requires.
Okay.
And I've got to do my responsibility
Sure.
to make sure that we're, in all good faith,
Yeah.
but yeah, if the public, we're aware that we're trying to reach consensus on pretty important policy issues and they weren't noticed of it, that
Sure.
could be a problem. And that's really my,
Okay.
my immediate concern.
So Mayor, you're going to have Ed work with legal to tell if it's all right or what the process is going to be, right?
Well, I've
Absolutely, we will
I've
ensure.
actually asked to be inserted, and anybody else can be inserted that they want, but I want to make sure we're aware of
Sure.
what policies we're going to be discussing, so we can appropriately agenda.
I think all of us would like that.
Yeah, we want
Yeah,
to, that's perfectly,
absolutely.
We'll receive an agenda.
perfectly fine, yeah. But yeah, we can't come to a meeting and throw ideas out there and try to reach consensus in the same meeting on a particular policy issue without having noticed the public, not generically that we're going to be having a strategic planning, but we have to notice them on the particular policy issues that we might reach consensus on. That's the point that I'm trying to get across.
Okay.
I mean, Brad, I don't know if I'm accurately describing what the requirements of the open meeting law are on this issue. I hate to stick around, but it's really important.
Sure.
I got
So-
that. We'll make sure it's done right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we hear you. We'll make sure it's noticed correctly. All of us will be notified as to what the decision is, and
Yeah.
we can move forward.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you all, and happy holidays.